We're back. November 22nd, 1963 is a day that haunts the American memory, but perhaps no one more so than ClintHill, the Secret Service agent who raced to the president's motorcade, or up to the car actually, as Lee Harvey Oswald fired the shots that killed John F. Kennedy. There's some pictures of it right now. Hill famously climbed onto the back of the president's car just moments, seconds really, after the third fatal shot, and positioned himself over the First Lady to protect her and the president. ClintHill was assigned to Jackie Kennedy's security detail for 4 years back then. He recounts the whole experience finally now in his new book, Mrs. Kennedy and Me. I guess the question, Clint, is why you waited to write this incredible story?
Well, I really vowed I'd never write a book of any kind, never contribute to any book. And then I met Lisa McCubbin, who was a writer, and I began to trust her and had confidence in her, and she started to convince me that the information I had was historic and should be documented. And I finally agreed, and that was what we decided to do.
I guess the question everybody wants to know is, you heard the shots.
Yes.
And you raced to the car. What happened then?
Well, I raced to the car, but just before I got there, the third shot was fired. I didn't hear the second shot because I was running, but the third shot was fired just as I was approaching the car, hit the president in the head, upper right rear. And it was a tremendous wound, causing blood and brain matter to come out of the wound over myself and the car. About that time, Mrs. Kennedy came up with the trunk of the car. She was trying to retrieve material that came off the president's head, off the right rear. And I got up in the car and pushed her back into the seat. When I did that, the president's body fell over into her lap.
And the car was moving all this time?
The car was continuously moving, and they began to accelerate just as I got there, and which caused me to slip. And I had to run a couple extra steps to get up on top. My objective was to get up on top and form a shield between President and Mrs. Kennedy and whoever was firing at them, because we had no idea how many shots were going to be fired or what was going on. So
when you went back, I guess 1990?
That was the first time.
And I've been there. It's so strange to see those pictures, even for me, who had nothing to do with it. It didn't look like, when CBS did it didn't look like a hard shot.
There wasn't. If you look from the window where the firing took place to the impact point on the street, it's not very far at all.
And he had a telescopic lens, and he was a trained marksman for the Marines.
Correct, and he had all the advantages that day. We didn't have any, but and he was to our rear, to the back, so we didn't have a chance to get to him.
But today, you know, anywhere near the White House, anywhere near the president now, we saw with the vice president coming to our studio today, there's so much Secret Service now and so much surveillance. You couldn't stick a rifle barrel out a window.
Well, I don't think he even stuck it out the window in that case. He was secreted inside the window, the rifle barrel up on the windowsill, without the rifle barrel being outside the window.
I see.
So,
could he do that today?
Perhaps, but more than likely it wouldn't do any good because the president would be in a fully armored car, no open cars.
Now, the other thing I think a lot of people wonder about is if there had been the bubble top, if they hadn't have popped it that day. It was still not bulletproof, right?
Not at all. It was just made out of plastic.
And he could have shot if he intended to.
Oh, absolutely.
My argument against all conspiracy theories, by the way, is I think it's a crime of opportunity. I think this guy was out trying to get Nixon one day, went after Edward Walker. Harvey Oswald had that job long before the parade route was set that day. It couldn't have been put there because nobody knew where the parade route was going to be.
True.
And so I think it's pretty simple. He was a commie sympathizer who would love Castro. He was infatuated with him. Anyway, the story all makes sense to me. Did you ever form any conclusions yourself?
Yes, he was the lone shooter. One shot,
I think too.
One shooter, 3 shots off in the same location.
That's what I think. Let me ask you about the Jackie Kennedy. What was she like?
A wonderful woman, really a great hands-on mother, a dedicated wife, a very athletic woman. She loved to ride horses and was very good at it. Loved to water ski, play tennis.
She loved you guys, especially you. She wrote, I got a hold of the actual text, this typed text of her first interview after the assassination with Theodore White, and she talks about you, about how much you loved the family, how much you really looked out for them. It was very personal, her affection for what you'd done for them.
Well, we were very close, and we were very close with John and Caroline, and we were with them all the time. I was gone from my own family from 80 to 90% of the time, and all that time I was with Mrs. Kennedy and the children. I had 2 boys. They grew up without me, without a father for all intents and purposes.
You were always working?
Always working and always with her. Took her to dinner.
Yeah. Looked out for her. I love the idea of John practicing his salute because I saw an old picture, a tape of him down at Wexford, their weekend retreat house, where she was rehearsing them.
Yes, all developed prior to Armistice Day in 1963.
Name of the book, Mrs. Kennedy and Me, Weekend Reading. I recommend. I'm holding this up now because I think you should get this book. It's a great book if you care about our country, and let's face it, a real sentiment we all have about this guy here, Clint Hill. Thanks, Clint, for coming on.
Thank you.
When we return, let me finish with my praise for the Secret Service. It's about time. You're watching Hardball